Allah, Yahweh, Bashim, Yahushai, Rakatha, Yahweh, Rakatha, Yahushai. Shalaki. Shalom, my brothers and sisters. This is your brother Obadiayahing, and just want to hit a quick one here, a little break from the monotony. With all that high class that has gotten to be a little bit out of control. That's one of them lines you heard before from Will Smith. Clearly he needs to get out of his wicked life. Grew up with Will in Philadelphia. Will Smith, he's a character, boy, I tell you. Hebrew Israelite don't realize he is, boy. But we got super coons out there, what you gonna do, right? What you gonna do? Win the coons, and they come for you. Anyway, family member had hit me up on a very interesting topic and a thought. And I promised that I would go ahead and address it to the best that the Ruach HaKodesh and Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai would offer in reference to some clarity and some understanding on it. Now, take in consideration, I'm no expert on this, okay? I had to do my research, and what I found is what was available. I'm sure there's more information out there, and I'm sure that it will be something that needs to have further research. Now, basically what we're talking about is what the articles of clothing and what a lot of people call costumes, but are quite literally traditional Hebrew Israelite wear, clothing for men and for women. There's biblical clothing that is worn, and we have renditions of it right now that you see on the highways and byways with some of the Akim out teaching, and some of the Akim and the Aqua wearing when they go to and fro to do things for their lives, as far as while they're here at this time period. And I did some research and stuff and looked into a few things, and I found some interesting documentation, and I'm going to read some of it to kind of clarify, you know, what is it that they're wearing? You know, what are some of the head dresses that the men are wearing? You know, what are some of the headdresses that the women are wearing? What are they called? As far as also the articles of clothing that they wear on the upper body, lower body, and so on and so forth. So what we want to do is I'm going to try to give a little bit of detail about why they wear it and what they're wearing and when they're wearing and what they're wearing it for the most part, and when they probably should or shouldn't wear it. Now again, I'm no expert on this. I've done my homework. Hopefully I did homework enough. And it's just a little side piece that I want to do because I was asked that question. And that was a very good question. And I don't believe I've ever seen any particular video lessons on what we wear as a people, as a nation of Hebrew Israelites in this world right now. Or even then, I haven't seen any videos on it. So if anybody's got any, I'd like to see them posted and show me whatever they're wearing. Shalaki, give me a second here. I had a little fan thing going on. I wanted to cut that off so I could hear better and you could hear better. Okay. All right. So, and let me just also do a little. I always do a little commentary prior to doing a little bit of a lesson, and it's no exception for this right now. Let me just share this with you. I have been getting a series of dreams recently, and I believe that the Most High is sending me a message, and maybe several messages. I don't necessarily know all of what they are and what and when and what they specifically mean. Some of them have good clarity, some of them don't. But I'm sure that a lot of us have dreams that we have, and some of us don't dream. I can't answer why, for what reason or not, but I'm just saying in reference to what I've experienced for the most part. Some of the dreams, and I don't want to go into details about the dreams, but what I want to do is talk about dreams in general and what I have come to believe and understand about dreams, and this and that. This could be very much the case, and of course, biblically, you know, Daniel had dreams, David had dreams, Joseph had dreams in the Bible. There's plenty of recorded records in reference to that in terms of how, as well as several of the prophets, as which I'm doing, of course, a series on the prophets. Dreams are very much a form of methodology that the Most High Yahweh, as well as Yahushai, communicates with his chosen people. Do I know or do I have any knowledge to whether or not any of the other nations of individuals opposite the chosen children of the Most High have dreams? Probably they do. I don't know. I've probably heard some instances of it before when I've, seen some things on YouTube or whatever. But I don't really concern myself with that. The Most High says He's not dealing with any other nations, so I'm not going to get into that about them either. If they got them, they got them. If they don't, they don't. And I don't even know why they would, other than the Most High is letting them know that they're in big trouble. Okay, but dreams in general. The thing about it is sometimes a dream can be a daydream. Now, when we daydream, to me, the way I feel about it, in terms of what I feel is happening to me at the time when I do go through a dream, and you can chime in and let me know if you want to respond to whether or not you have the same similar experiences or same kind of effect. To me, when I daydream or have a dream, it makes me feel as though my spirit that's in this body and in this soul is having a moment of communication with the Most High, or with the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, and with Yahushua, or all three, or one of the. When I say all three, I mean that the Father, He is the supreme, the Son, who is placed in charge by the Father, and of course the Ruach HaKodesh, which is the Holy Spirit, which is a power that the Father and the Son share. So I'm not a Trinitarian. I don't believe in the Trinity crap like that. So that's not where I'm going. But what I'm saying is that when my spirit is touched by the Most High, Obadiayahing Yahushai, a lot of times I have sort of a feeling as though my spirit is close to the Father during that point in time when that dream is being communicated. Because it's sort of like what Paul said in the Bible about when he had his out-of-body experience, when he said, not knowing whether I was in the body or out of the body during that period of time. It's roughly paraphrased, but what you can look that scripture up when he spoke about that, and he said that he had that moment, and when he was in the third heaven, and he had his out-of-body experience with his spirit. I'm not saying I had that exactly situation go down, but I kind of feel like when I dream sometimes that my spirit is on the move and it is drifting with the Most High to uncover information that would be pertinent to what I'm about to experience or what I may need to address. Now, some of us may feel the same way. We may go through and have those same kinds of experiences. I'm not saying you're having an out-of-body experience per se, but what I am saying is that when we dream, even a daydream, when you daydream off, when people go, you just slipped off for a moment, and you're kind of staring into space, and at the same time that you're staring, I would call them mental visualizations are going through your body or through your person, and you're kind of feeling a way about something that you're thinking about, because your mind is taking you there in your mind's eye, and you're seeing something, so you're daydreaming off on that. Now some of us do daydream at times, and some of us do it subconsciously without knowing that we actually have done it. We just kind of are drifted off for a moment, and that's what we do. And then others perpetuate it within their own situation by taking pharmakia, and whether it will be a legal or illegal pharmakia. Nevertheless, I don't believe that the Most High is in favor of most of it anyway. And they create hallucinations, which could be considered daydream situations as well. I'm not going to belabor that point or get into that. But I'm just saying, and then when we sleep and we have a specific comfort and level in sleep, we have, sometimes we have pretty significant and detailed dreams about certain things, people, places, and things. And sometimes they're dreams that are pretty cool and they're okay, and sometimes they're not as good as you think. Now, do I believe that a nightmarish dream is an indication that there could be some, I would say, some negative spirits, some evil spirits, as they say, dealing with you? Well, I don't know if that would be completely accurate, because, see, from what I understand in terms of my study and reading about my Father, the Most High Yahweh, He controls all things. So that means He controls all parts of all things, left side, right side, good, bad, and then everything in between. The Most High is the authority over all. I mean, I don't care what anyone else has told you, that's the way it is. So if you are having a dream that is something that would be considered to be acceptable and awesome and wonderful, He's controlling that. And if you're having a dream that's tearing your butt apart because you probably are being wicked and done some things that's unsatisfactory to the Most High as far as what He is also expected of us or of you, then that's what you have to deal with as well. But He controls all things. But not to digress, but all I'm saying is I've been having a couple of pretty interesting dreams. There haven't been any nightmarish situations. Thank the Most High Yahweh Hashem Yahushua for that. I don't want any of those either. But they have been very good and informative in terms of a lot of the things that are happening to us. I'm not having anything that is entirely prophetic in terms of speaking to what's coming in the future, as opposed to what I can read from the scriptures. But I am having, I guess what you would call incantations from a righteous spiritual perspective about specific lessons that I am supposed to exchange with you, as well as information that the Most High and Yahweh Hashem Yahushua is exchanging with me. Maybe just about what my situation is and the status of what He wants me to do. But nevertheless, the feeling is really awesome, because sometimes when you do dream, you feel like you're floating or you're flying, but you also feel a euphoric type of existence, and maybe you guys can think, or maybe you brothers and sisters, you Aki Nakwabi, can understand that the euphoric type of feeling in reference to while that dream is going on, your body is extremely comfortable, relaxed, and it's nothing traumatic happening. It's very blissful and blessed, and it is also to me an indication of how a peaceful sleep could be when you're no longer in the flesh and you are resting until the Most High decides to reactivate you in the way that he promised to do. It's pretty interesting, and I think it's very wonderful that we get a chance to experience that side of the spiritual connection between our Heavenly Father, who is a spirit, and everything, of course, that is in the physical was created from spiritual. Now, there you may get some contention from individuals who are not in favor of understanding or believing in that the Father exists and that He controls all things. But that's on them. If they want to do that, I'll say this: all of us must leave this flesh, and when you do, you will know for sure. And I tell you right now, I fear my Father because I know Him, and He ain't playing. Look at what He's doing to the planet. Look what He's doing to the people and the inhabitants of the planet collectively. He doesn't play favorites, and he's not playing. He will definitely use his vigorous and righteous hand to correct in ways that will definitely basically cancel your time here if he has to. He will do that. And he has no problem with whoever or whatever you think you are, he can do it. So I fear that in the fact that not that he would do that to me, but that if I did have to leave, that my appearance with him, he would see disappointment, and I can't do that. I can't tolerate the fact that, or even want to accept the fact that if I did show up in front of the Most High, that I would hear a disappointing opinion of from him on me. I just don't. I would like not to hear that at all, and I'm trying to do best to serve the Father so that that doesn't become a reality. But just wanted to tap on that in reference to just been having a couple of wonderful spiritual experiences in the dreams that the Most High has been presenting, and I love him for it. And I think that it's a wonderful thing to get that kind of communication in a very somber and quiet and serene and peaceful, and I love it because it is a closer walk with him. It's a closer opportunity to be near him as possible. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, well, Shalaki, let's get into this. All right, where's my glasses? Here they go. All right, cool. All right, get a little bit of water. That's good. Okay, men and women's clothing when it comes to us Hebrew Israelites and what kind of garments and things we wear. All right, some stuff I pulled down. I want to read it to you. Men and women clothes differ from one another, obviously. They should, even though the Bible clearly says that a woman is not supposed to wear what pertains to a man, and as vice versa, a man is not supposed to wear what pertains to a woman. Hint, hint, Tyler Perry. Okay, move on. This is because there were laws that forbid men and women to exchange dress. We know that their clothes were not identical, but all the evidence suggests that they were much alike in their general design. So Hebrew Israelites were styling, as I call it. Okay. There are many different sections of the ancient Hebrew dress. Some of these parts are the inner garment, also known as the tunic or shirt, the outer tunic or robe, the girdle, and the outer garment, the mantle, and the headdress. Okay? The tunic was a shirt that was worn next to the skin. It was made out of leather, hair cloth, wool, or linen. Both sexes wore tunics, but they was a difference in the style and pattern. For men, the tunic came down to the knees and was fastened at the waist by a girdle of leather or cloth. Female tunics were very similar to the males, but went down to their ankles. So that's important to know in terms of if you're wearing something that's proper in terms of your gender, okay? All right, to the ankles. Got it. There were and still are two different kinds of girdles. These girdles are normally either made out of leather, linen, or even sometimes silk. For the most part, girdles serve as pouch to keep money and other things that an individual might need. It was also used to fasten a man's sword to his body. Hence, the girdle was a very important part of man's attire as well as women. The outer garment, the kesut, K-E-S-U-T, the kesut also covered one while sleeping and was the final and most important part of one's wardrobe. The male and female version of the outer garment were also similar but were different in style. There were also different types of outer garments. For example, women wore special outerwear when they were widowed. All outer garments went to right above the ankles and had a hood for women, or ended at the middle of the calf for man. Okay? That's one portion of what we're looking at here. All right, let's get into some more biblical clothing information and documentation here. All righty. All right. Okay. Let's see. We got right here in a rare depiction clothing, King Jehu, or possibly Jehu's ambassador, kneels at the feet of Salmashter III on the black obelisk. And I'm going to pull that in so you can see a little bit about that picture, so you can see it. So, Shalaki, let me get close. And maybe you can see that if I pull it in close. There it is. Yeah, how about that? See that? Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right. Okay. All right. Finishing. All right. The clothing of the people of the biblical times was made from wool, linen, animal skins, and perhaps silk, as I said before. Most events in the Old and New Testament take place in ancient Israel, and thus most biblical clothing is ancient Hebrew clothing. All right. They wore underwear and cloth shirts, cloth skirts. See that? We are a righteous, cleanly people. We're supposed to be. We wear underwear. We wear skirts. So if anybody's going around so-called commando with nothing on, you're in error. You shouldn't be doing that, okay? So just wanted to state that, because I know some people feel like, what do you have on under that? Yes, Hebrew Israelites have underwear underneath their tunics and the clothing that they wear, okay? Let's just make sure we got that straight. Okay, all right. It says complete descriptions of the styles or dress among the people of the Bible is almost impossible because the material at hand is insufficient. In other words, they haven't really been able to pull a lot of stuff except for what they've seen on several hieroglyphics and things of that nature in Egypt. And I was getting ready to say, Assyrian and Egyptian artists portray what is believed to be the clothing of the time, but there are few depictions of Israelite garb. One of the few available sources of Israelite clothing is in the Bible. Okay, now, why would there be less depictions of Israelite garb? Well, because at that point in time, we were not in control of Egypt, and we were slaves. We were in subjugation. We were in captivity. So why would they want to talk about our adornment and the things that we wear in a way that would be significant or positive? I don't see that would be the case. Just like they do today, though, with the Hebrew Israelites, they're going around the streets and the highways and byways. Oh, they copy our complete style. They have no style if they don't get it from us. Okay, it's pretty much the case. But now they've been making a corrupt version of a style based on superlative narratives that they put on us in degradation fashion, so that they got us doing things that they present. Hebrew Israelites would never wear their pants sagging or hanging below their bottoms or below their hind parts. They wouldn't do that. That's not something we do. All right, so that's out. We also would not overly expose ourselves in terms of the way that we wear clothes. We wouldn't be in any tight suits. We wouldn't be any tight clothing that would accentuate any particular body parts in terms of women. That's just something that we're not interested in. We're not into that. There are some people who have been drawn into that level of fornication and lasciviousness, but it's not a natural effect for us as a nation, of Hebrew Israelite nation, if we are not tainted and subjected to that particular dogma. We're not into that. Okay. All right. Undergarments. All right. We're going to talk about some of the names of these things, because I think it's important to kind of get some bearings on it. There's a undergarment that's called a ezor or hagor. That's spelled E-Z-O-R or H-A-G-O-R. The earliest and most basic garment was the ezor. Okay. All pronunciations are approximate. Okay, they got to approximate them. Or a hagor, an apron around the hips or loins. That is, primitive times was made from the skins of animals, and it was a simple piece of cloth worn in various modifications, but always worn next to the skin. Priests wore a ezor, a E-Z-O-R, or linen known as a ephod, E-P-H-O-D-H, okay? If worn for mourning, it was called a sack, S-A-K, a sack. When garments were held together by a belt or a girdle, the cloth was also called a isor or headwear. Okay, and clearly that's another item that you can possibly see sometimes on the highways and byways of our Achaean brothers wearing. I got another picture I want to pop out and show you here real quick. Shalaki, stay with me. Here we go. See if you get that one in, pretty in focus. Yeah, okay. All right, so I got that one. All right. Now, you will see sometimes the Achaean and the brothers on the highways and byways, and they have on like a tunic, and it has the blue border, various different colors. And of course, you may see fringes around the ends and tzitzis. We're going to talk about fringes and tzitzis in that religious type wear also when we get a little further into this here. Now, the picture I just showed you, it was Egyptian depiction of Aztecs that shows the outer garment as a wrap that leaves one shoulder and both arms free. It is a form of, it is from the tomb of the 12th century dynasty, officially Kunatep II at Beni Hassim, and shows them entering Egypt around 900 BC. Their nearest biblical contemporaries were the earliest of the Hebrews, such as Abraham. All right? Now, we're going to get into the next thing, which is called a kenetoff. A kenetoff is K-E-T-H-O-N-E-T-H, if you want to look that up. A kenetoff. The Izor later became displaced among the Hebrews by the kenetoff, translated into Greek as chiton, and under tunic, corresponding most nearly to our long shirt. The kenetoff appears in Assyrian art as a tight-fitting undergarment, sometimes reaching only to the knee, sometimes to the ankle. In its early form, the kenetoff was without sleeves and even left and right shoulder uncovered. In time, men of leisure wore kenetoff with sleeves. In later times, anyone dressed only in a kenetoff was described as naked. Ain't that interesting? And that's in 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 24. And of course, Isaiah chapter 20, verse 2, and 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 30, and John chapter 21, verse 7. Deprived of it, he would be absolutely naked. So if you didn't have on that kenetoff, you would be considered naked. All right, next thing is a satin, S-A-D, a satin, S-A-D-H-I-N, satin. The well-off might also wear a satin under the kenetoff. This rather long undergarment had sleeves and was of fine linen. Right. Next we have a simala, S-I-M-L-A-H, simala. The simala was a heavy outer garment of shawl or various forms. It consisted of a large rectangular piece of rough, heavy woolen material crudely sewn together so that the front was unstitched and with two openings left for the arms. Flax is another possible material. It is translated into Kino Greek as a himitation. H-I-M-A-T-I-O-N. H-I-M-A-T-I-O-N. And the ISB concludes that it is closely resembled, if it was not identical with the imitation of the Greeks. So you know the Greeks also influenced the clothing of the times as well and the people. I'm going to show another picture in a few minutes. Let me finish this here. In the day it was protection from the rain and the cold, and at night when traveling, Israelites could wrap themselves in the garment for warmth on their journey to the temple for the feast 3 times a year. You had to go for the holy days and Passover and what have you. They are required to gather from around the world on his holy land, as Scripture says in Deuteronomy 16:16, as well as Deuteronomy chapter 24:13. The front of the simila, also called, could be arranged in wide folds. See Exodus chapter 4 verse 6, and all kinds of products could be carried in it. See Kings, 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 39, and Exodus chapter 12 verse 34. Every prospective man generally wore a shemlah over the kinetoth, all right? But since the shemlah hindered work, it was either left home or removed when working. See Matthew chapter 24:18. From this simple item of common people developed a richly ornamented mantle of a well-off which reached from the neck to the knees and had short sleeves. Okay, I want to show some more pictures here. Some more, because it's always good to have some pictures. Some of this I'm sure we're not going to be wearing in this day and age right now. Okay, it's just not going to be something that, all right, I'm going to pop in closer on this one at the top, as you can see it. And I'm, of course, going to give you a picture of this kinetoth and this simila here in this picture depicted, okay? Got it? See that? All right, you see the woman in the background, what she's wearing? Now, I don't know that we'll be actually wearing that to the nth degree right now in this time period, because getting that article of clothing and getting that material, some of the Akim and the Aquamin will be wearing these things. I don't get this twisted. Most of the brethren that you see out on the highways and byways, they are wearing a tunic type kinetoth, and then they are wearing these clothing, this type of clothing, and you may see them in a cinema and a kinetoth. It's not impossible that could be the case. It's just that I think that they're wearing a more modernization style of the clothing as you see now. All right, and we're going to move on to some more information, and of course I'll show another picture. But the picture that I see here looks more like what you see most of your Arabs wearing. Okay, but what can I tell you? All right, the modern abaya, similar to the biblical mili, worn with the kiyafi headdress. Okay, so let's take a look at what I just said. The modern abaya, similar to the biblical mila, worn with the kiyafi headdress. Now, let me show you a picture of that. I got to show you these pictures because it's only going to make it easier to understand and see what's going on when you see these pictures. There you go. See that? See what he's wearing? Now, doesn't that look more like an Arab dude from what we've seen for the most part nowadays? To me, it does. So, but I guess they took and got their style from us to a degree, right? Okay. The meal is spelled M-E, that hyphen area up there, I-L, the meal. The meal, translated into Greek as the stole, stands for a variety of garments worn over the undergarment like a cloak. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 19, and 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 27. But used only by men of rank or of the priestly order. So you do happen to see a lot of the men, Shlaki, of the men of the Hebrew Israelite Akim out on the highways and byways wearing this type of dress, but more of a tunic that comes over in the back and the front, cut out around the neck with the blue border, and they're more of the priestly royalty visualization when they're out there. It's to my knowledge, because they're at a point where they're ready to read, and it also has some contingencies towards warrior dress, and we're going to address some of that as well. Okay. Okay. He says okay. So he said that was more of rank of the priestly order. Mark chapter 12 verse 38 and Luke chapter 20, verse 46. Luke 15, verse 22. The mealy was a costly wrap. In 1 Samuel 2:19, it says in 1 Samuel 18:4, and 1 Samuel 24:5, and 1 Samuel 24:11. You can get the description of the priest mealy was similar to the sleeveless abaya in Exodus chapter 28, verse 31. Antiquities will show you a lot of that. I have a book on antiquities here that should show some of these things as well, but I'm not going to go into the detail, but I just want to show you the book on black antiquities. This is the book. You might want to see if you can possess that. It will be real good. Blacks in Antiquity. It shows us wearing a lot of the clothing that they're talking about in this situation, as far as Hebrew Israelites. So I'm seeing if I can find one in here, one of their pictures in here real quick for you, if I can. Shalaki. I didn't plan to pull this book out, but sometimes it's good to pull it out. Oh, you can see something. Let me see what I can find here. It's always good to see if we can find something, right? You know, there's something we can look at real quick. How about that? See? See that? There's a brother there. There's another one there. Sort of adapt almost like a Roman style, because, you know, they were in captivity, so they were being Hellenized anyway. That's another study for another time. Okay, all right, in sleeveless abaya, and that was in Exodus. This, like the mealy of the high priest, may have reached only to the knees, but it is commonly supposed to have been a long sleeve garment made of a light fabric. Okay, and then it had another name here. I'm gonna see if I can pronounce this. These names are interesting. I gotta do some study on how to pronounce these names appropriately too. It says that Adareth Ma Adafa, Adareth Mahada, Adareth Mahadava. That's pretty good. At a later period, the nobles wore over a similar, or in place of it, a wide, many-folded mantle of state in Adareth. And Adareth is spelled A-D-D-E-R-E-T, in Adareth, okay? Or a matifah. A matifah made of rich material. You'll see Isaiah chapter 3, verse 22, imported from Babylon. Also see Joshua chapter 7, verse 21. The leather garment worn by the prophets was called by the same name because of its width. Okay? So that's the Adarath, okay, which were worn by Jeremiah, Isaiah. I remember seeing some of that when I was doing my study on that. Okay, now we can talk a little bit more about religious accessories like the tzitzis. The Torah commanded the Israelites wear tassels or fringes. Tzitzis is spelled here S-I-S-I-T. The pronunciation spelling is T-S-E-E, T-S-E-E-T, tzitzis. Attached to the four corners, to the corners of the garment, and that's in Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 12, Numbers 15, 38 through 39. And in Numbers 15:39 records that the tassels were to serve as a reminder to keep the Lord's commandments, keep his laws, statutes, and commandments. And now you have also something called a tefillin, T-E-F-I-L-L-I-N, okay? And then the physalicers, that's interesting. Physalicers, P-H-Y-L-A-C-T-E-R-I-E-S, okay? Phalicers, it could almost be phalaceres, or tefillin in Hebrew, are boxes containing biblical verses attached to the forehead and the arm by leather straps, and were in use by the New Testament times. See Matthew chapter 23, verse 5. I remember seeing a little box that was put the so-called Jewish people over in Jerusalem now, the Israelis, or the fake Jews, they were wearing. Sometimes they would wear that box that you see, like a little box, and they had a head wrap on it, and they would wear it on their arm as well as on the head. And that's what that was for, to keep some commandments in that. That's interesting. Oh well. Okay, the headwear. Depictions show some Hebrews and Syrians bareheaded or wearing merely a band to hold their hair together. Hebrew people undoubtedly also wore head coverings. Okay, and you've seen a lot of those also out on the highways and byways quite regularly when it comes to the men teaching while they're out there. Similar to the modern kiyafi, a large square piece of wooden cloth folded diagonally in front in half into a triangle. The fold is worn across the forehead with a kiyafi loosely wrapped around the back and shoulders, often held in place by a cord or circlet. Men and women of the upper classes wore a kind of turban cloth wound around the head. The shape varied greatly. They call that a michi or michi. Yeah, michi. Okay, and then next we had, as far as footwear, we have something, it's called a na layim. Sandals, na yarim, they're sandals, or leather worn to protect the feet from burning, sand, and dampness. Sandals might also be of wood with leather straps. Genesis chapter 14 through 23. Isaiah 5, chapter 5, verse 27. Sandals were not worn in the house nor in the sanctuary. Exodus chapter 3, verse 5, and Joshua chapter 5, 15. To walk around without sandals was otherwise a sign of great poverty. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 19, or of mourning. 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 30. Ezekiel chapter 24, verse 17 and 23. Okay? So that tells a lot about the types of clothing that were worn for certain ceremonial situations as well as everyday wear. Next we have the Shema, Kinoth, and Sadin. While a woman's garment mostly corresponds to those of men, they wore Shema and Kinothi. They also eventually differ in some ways from those men. In Deuteronomy chapter 22:5, women's garments were probably longer in compare. In Num chapter 3 verse 5, and Jeremiah chapter 13 verse 22, and Shalaki in Jeremiah chapter 13:26, as well as Isaiah chapter 47 verse 2, had sleeves. Okay, in 2 Samuel 13:19, presumably were brighter colors and more ornamented, and also may have been of finer material. Also worn by women was a sadin, the finer linen underdress. And that you can get reading on that and understanding from scripture in Isaiah chapter 3 verse 23 and Proverbs chapter 22 verse 24. Okay, the mitpah, furthermore mentioned in many of the mitpah, the tichel, a kind of veil or shawl. Ruth chapter 3 verse 15. This was originally just a woman's neckcloth, other than the use by a bride, okay, or a bride to be. Genesis chapter 24 verse 65. Prostitutes, Genesis 38:12, and possibly others. Ruth 3:3. A woman did not go veiled. A woman did not go veiled. Genesis chapter 12:14. Genesis chapter 24:15. The present custom in the Middle East to veil the face originates with Islam. It wasn't with us Hebrew Israelites. That's not what we did. According to the ancient laws, it was reached from the forehead over the back of the head to the hips or lower, and was like a neckerchief or a Palestinian woman in Palestine and Israel today. So from what you can see. All right, we're going to come to wrapping this up here because we're getting close and long into the situation. So ancient Hebrew clothing. The ancient Hebrew people wore very colorful or very colorful in their apparel, especially the priest. Yahweh used such clothing to serve as reminders and symbols of his truths and commandments to his people. Though delving into such symbolism in depth is beyond the scope of this article, there are three common general words of clothing or garments: beged, B-E-G-E-D, simlah, S-I-M-L-A-H, and salamah, S-A-L-M-A-H. The last two are thought to be the same word via transposition of the I and the M, and both have a sense of to clothe. Similar, as used in Genesis 35:2, seems to include not only clothing but anything put on the body, such as earrings, or similar is shalaki, or similar is used in descriptive passages in Psalms 104:2, verse 2, which describes Yahweh as clothed in light. Okay? As for the things made of cloth or thread, and Hebrews commonly wore robes, sashes, belts, and turbans, most garments were made of linen, especially the priest garments, and a few of wool, never combining them. Very few would have been comprised of both wool and linen. Very few, as he said, woven threads. Though Leviticus chapter 19:19, often only the wealthy could afford the multitude of fineries mentioned in the Bible, but almost everyone wore a robe. The most common type of robe mentioned, of course, is the kinetoth. We talked about that. This word comes from the word that means to cover, and describes an outer garment. The word is translated as coat or robe, and it can be described as a basic robe or a fine robe. Joseph's coat of many colors was a kinetoth. Also, the fine robes of the king's virgin daughters were kinetoths. 2 Samuel 13, chapter 13, verse 18. It is used as an evidence of honor and high position in Isaiah chapter 22, verse 21. Such robes were drawn up when working or running. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 29, and 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 46. Similarly, Peter tells us to gird up the loins of our mind. 1 Peter 1 and 13. Yeah, they wore that type of robe and that type of similar, where they had to pull it up when they're fighting and tuck it in their belt so that they wouldn't trip over it or get it caught between their legs if they were fighting. So the men had to do that at times. Another robe mentioned is the Adaroth, a rather unique type of robe. It can carry the meaning of glory. See, that's interesting. Zechariah chapter 11, verse 3. It is commonly worn by the prophets. John the Baptist probably wore a type of a rough Adaroth. And Esau wore one as well. And that's something. Well, he was back then. I'm sure he would. The Bible makes the comment that Adaroth is a common cloak that prophets wore, a robe, Adaroth, alone just something of beauty and honor. Okay, so Esau trying to have some honor, right? Ain't that something? Joshua chapter 7, verse 21. The prophet's attire may have been simple, but the image it conveyed was one of great dignity. Finally, the last common type of robe was a mighty, M-I-D-I, M-E-hyphen-I-Y-L, a mighty. 1 Samuel 18:4, another outer robe. Jonathan gave this type of robe to David. Now, I should note that Jonathan also gave David his girdle or belt. This was quite a gift because this was no normal girdle. The word used in this instance is a chawar, C-H-A-G-O-W-R, a chawar. A chawar commonly describes an expensive girdle, a battle belt. That's very similar to what you see when the brothers are wearing the tunics out here on the highways and byways, and they have that fine girdle around them. It's very decorative. That's that chihuahua. It looks like a battle girl, right? That's what it says here. It was a battle belt, okay? 2 Samuel 18:11. It was an honor to receive one and was even used as criteria for eligibility to fight in a battle. 2 Kings 3:21. It implies that it must be earned. See, that's very interesting and good. So when you see these brothers out on the street and they've got on all this, they got on their shimala and their Kenetoff and then their chihuahua, they got on their belt, their girdle belt, they got on their battle belt, man. That's pretty awesome, man, to see them out there with that on like that. So they must have earned it in order to do it, right? And to be given one, as Jonathan did for David, as Joab mentioned in 2 Samuel, would be a great honor. On a lesser scale, it is also used of the apron that Adam and Eve tied about them to cover their nakedness. And it also describes a decorative belt for wealthy women. Isaiah chapter 3, verse 24. Now that's interesting when he says something about Adam and Eve, because it would have been a rendition or a something similar to what they wore, because the Bible says they had the fig leaves that were covered, because they didn't have, unless they've used a belt made from the skins of an animal. But that's very interesting. Okay, the word chara, Chagowr, according to an account, only occurs 8 times in the Bible. Ezwar, Ezowr, or Ezwar, is another type of girdle. It is a common girdle mentioned frequently in Jeremiah chapter 13. Elijah wears a Ezwar. This Ezwar, it also used in Ezekiel 23:15 as worn by the Chaldean warriors. The last type of belt commonly mentioned is an adnet. It refers to a sash which was reserved almost exclusively for royalty or the priesthood. Now, you do see a lot of those out on the highways and byways, because I remember that myself. Okay, in Exodus chapter 28, 4 through 39, 4, and Isaiah 22:21. On the Assyrian artifact dubbed the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser, the third King Jeru of the Bible, is pictured as wearing a fine robe and such a sash as was worn by high-ranking officials. Another article of clothing of interest on the artifact are the tassels attached to the fringes, the tzitzis of Jeru's robe, which Yahweh commanded the Israelites to wear for remembrance of his ordinances. Of course, that's Numbers 15, chapter 15, 38 through 40. Okay, we're almost finished here, so bear with me. Okay, all right. Finally, concerning apparel made of fabric, turbans and caps were worn on the head. Linen headdresses, twisted as turbans, were common for men. The Pierre Labia, wealthy women. The Pierre bridegrooms wore a Pierre. The priest, the Megabah. The Megabah. Exodus chapter 28, verse 40, and Isaiah chapter 3, verse 20, as well as Isaiah 61:10. The Pierre is the most common word used for a turban. It denotes a garland about the head, yet by extension means any covering, and is also used in the sense of adornment. In the beautifully poetic verse of Isaiah 61:3, Pierre is also used in the sense of beauty. Give unto them beauty, Pierre, for ashes. 2 other words are Corbella, Daniel chapter 3, and Tubawa, a tabawa, Ezekiel chapter 23:15, denotes a turban, but only used once in the Bible each. As for women, a mikpah on Ruth chapter 3:15, Isaiah 3:22, and a radia, Songs 5:7, Isaiah 3:23, describes a veil or shawl worn over the head. Okay? Shalaki, I know we're getting close to that time here. As the last section of the article, I will cover jewelry. The entire section half of Isaiah 3 is referenced several times above for clothing. could warrant its own article on the vast amount of clothing and jewelry mentioned for wealthy women, but I will only mention a few of them below. It is probably the longest list of apparel that we have, though it is connected only with women in the Bible, though I will reference other verses for those articles of jewelry not included in Isaiah 3 list. First, it says a kuwamaz, 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 which that was worn by Hebrew women, seems to denote any form of necklace, a kuwamaz, or bracelet, perhaps formed together with beads. Numbers chapter 31 through 50, and Exodus chapter 35, verse 22. Another type of general necklace was a rabid, a rabid, a rabid, used of a necklace given to Joseph. Two interesting articles of jewelry. A necklace and its pendant occurred in conjunction with not only women but also camels. Apparently, the ancient Middle Eastern Hebrews people decorated their camels profusely. In Agag, A-N-A-G, in Agag describes the necklace, Judges chapter 8, verse 26, and Proverbs 1, verse 9. And a Sharon, S-A-H-A-R-O-N, the interesting crescent-shaped pendant often attached to them. Judges 8, 21, 26, and Isaiah 3:18. Moving on, a tismayah, T-S-A-M-I-Y-D, a tismayah was a type of bracelet commonly given to women. Ezekiel chapter 16, 11, and was used with rabid, as mentioned above. In Ezekiel chapter 16, which contains a rich description of Israel. Also used in Ezekiel 16 is a nezim, N-E-Z-E-M, a nezim, which were earrings or rings. Exodus 35 and 22, verse 22, Ezekiel 16 and verse 12, and adi, which A-D-I-Y, adi, which are women's ornaments, jewels, especially in brides. Adi was condemned by Ezekiel, okay? Chapter 7, verse 20, for being used to make idols, but Ezekiel chapter 16, 7 pictured wearing them as a coming of age symbol. Lastly, jewelry worn by both women and men included other types of bracelets, and surprisingly for men, earrings, a nipayapah, N-E-T-I-Y-P-H-A-H, a nipayah, were the earrings. Judges chapter 2, Judges chapter 8, verse 26, and Isaiah 3, verse 19. And Eshtabah, E-S-T-E-T-S-A-D-H, Eshtabah describes the bracelet Saul wore, and Eshtabah, which was taken off of him when he died in battle. 2 Samuel, okay, chapter 1, verse 10. That's very interesting because you see a lot of the brothers Akim on the streets with these bracelets on, that they're kind of long, and it's sort of like a battle bracelet. So that of course would be the Eshtabah. Okay, gotcha. See that? Because it says perhaps worn by warriors in battle. If their sound could be recognized and used as representing marching by making them jingle. This is alluded to once as an attractive women's anklet ornament in Isaiah chapter 3, verse 16. So, as you can see, the Hebrews were widely adorned with an assortment of clothing and jewelry. The type of one's clothing worn was used to denote social status, one's current attitude in life, rent garments for mourning, and garlands of the head for rejoicing, and often honor or shame. Much symbolism is tied to these various images that Yahweh uses. It is in His Word in both negative and positive ways to show how we relate, or we shall relate to Yahweh our God, and how He relates to us. It is so beautiful, the picture Yahweh's painted for us in His Word of how His people were beautifully adorned. Ezekiel chapter 16 for Him, and His wonderful promise given to us only, the Hebrew Israelites, to give us beauty and garland for ashes, and oil of gladness for mourning. Surely, just this small facet of the wonderful mysteries in Yahweh's word is in part a fulfillment of Psalm 72, verse 19, by filling the earth with his glorious imagery, which relates important truths to and through his people. Shalaki. Forgive me. But that's the little bit I wanted to share with you in reference to a family member who asked me to talk about clothing and adornment. So maybe you at some point would like to look into getting some of these articles of clothing to wear. Of course, I wear my shirt with my fringes. I don't put on the bracelets for the warrior bracelets or anything of that nature. And I do have a couple of tunics that have a border, and some don't have a border, but with the fringes on it. And I wear them for certain occasions. A lot of times when I put on a scarf or something around my head, or a michi or something like that, I do it to just kind of look a little bit different in my in the videos that I do for the Most High Obadiayahing Yahushai, and of course to honor a specific teaching at times that I think might be important, and I think it might get a little bit more response from the angels and the Holy Spirit when you dress up to adorn yourself for the Father. I don't do it necessarily for the people who view these videos. If they do, I really don't care if they do or they don't. Look at them. I'm just kind of doing what the Most High said, just trying to be a good steward and do work. And that's pretty much where I see it. I hope this short little, it wasn't that short, but I hope this particular video was edifying for you, and I hope that you will enjoy this one and look forward to the next one that's coming, because I'm going to continue the lives of the prophets that Yahweh is showing a map of the end times and the directives through that. So I'm going to continue doing that. So hopefully everything, you'll stay tuned and check that out. So I want to say shalom.